Welcome everyone to another installment of DCL Unplugged. Today we are talking with Simon Wilcox, our Managing Director.
Hi there.
And today we are looking a bit at technology and shift in technology from a slightly different angle. We looked a lot at automation in the tech part and development operations, how that affects companies. But now we would like to talk about a part of a company that's often overlooked, that's in terms of digital transformation left behind, and that's the finance department. Simon, what do you think? What are the first things that are going to be automated away in the finance department?
Well, the obvious things to automate away are the transactional components. So all of the transactions in and out of a business will become increasingly automated. Increasingly, there will not be a rekeying exercise between an invoice coming in and an invoice going out. It will just all flow together. So things like Xero, QuickBooks Online, and so on, all of those will integrate with systems, and that whole process will just become completely automated end to end, which will be fantastic because it will reduce a whole load of fraud. It'll speed things up, and it will allow the business to focus more on, or the finance team to focus more on adding value to the overall business.
Okay, so fraudsters be frightened, but the legitimate businesses actually will have a whole lot of weight taken off their shoulders.
Yeah.
Yet, on the other hand, that changes, it gives a shift of focus in what the finance department is to do. I imagine that this entire change, what do you reckon, how long will that take?
Well, it's happening quite quickly already. I mean, we're really seeing already organisations are looking to turn their data into some level of information, and that information into knowledge and actionable insight. So that sort of thing is already happening quite quickly. But I think we're going to see an acceleration of that now as we start to, as the CFO starts to spend more time looking sort of forward to those other activities that they can do, to the other sorts of systems that they can use to provide a better level of insight.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the focus, or rather the level of what's expected, the baseline is of day-to-day operations, it's less historic, or less backwards looking. We looked the data of last year and produced a balance sheet, profit loss, and hurrah, we are done. More into forward-looking, on-demand, insight generation. How does this impact the role of the people that work on day-to-day in the finance department?
I think it's going to be quite interesting because historically they've been very much tied up to the numbers and so on. But I think looking forward, a lot of what people are going to be doing in the finance department is choosing the kind of third parties that they want to work with. Which particular kind of system is going to give them the insight that they want? Which particular type of technology, whether it's sort of AI or machine learning or big data, whatever it might be, how are they going to use that to deliver insight? And I think that'll become much more of a sort of interactive kind of process for them in terms of choosing and deploying different systems.
That's interesting because if I look at the spectrum of organizations, very large organizations have very differentiated, very developed roles in the C-level and below. That is no doubt not the case for smaller companies where lots of those roles are mapped or amalgamated into one person. How do you see this? I see a bit of contention, potential between the CTO and the CFO when roles are mapped. Who chooses the third party? Who takes control, or who is in charge of getting all these things done? Or is this a collaborative process? How about data governance or data information security? Who is taking charge?
Well, that's a very good question. I think a lot of that lead will come from the CFO. So they will be tasked with looking at how do we get competitive advantage out of this data that we have. They'll be looking to select the third parties. And quite a lot of smaller companies, they will amalgamate things like, well, they may even amalgamate the CTO role, but certainly things like the CIO and the Chief Information Security Officer. A lot of those things may well get wrapped up into the CFO role because it's often seen as a sort of financially sort of data. And really, I think it's going to be down to selecting the right tools for the right job and getting the right kind of information out and being able to quickly iterate over and choose choose the right kind of data models that you need for for producing some kind of competitive advantage.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. However, I see, despite the current or the very common phrase, every company becomes a tech company, I do see a point that not every company can be a development or tech operational company. Where do you draw the fine line?
Well, I think that's what makes it really quite interesting, because you're right. Not every company is going to have their own development team in house. That's just not how it works. It hasn't been that way for a long time. It's not going to be that way in the future. So we're going to have companies that are developing specialist AI tools, specialist machine learning, specialist big data tools, and your company is going to want to take advantage of those. And things like the public cloud are going to be really, really great for that kind of process, because you can very quickly run up some technology, load up a bunch of data and software, see if it works. If it doesn't, off it goes. Park that. If it does work, we can get that rolled out into production. So the the kind of quick agileness of public cloud will help the CFO to be able to trial and look at new software that they historically wouldn't have been able to do, because of the kind of capital outlay that would be required on buying new servers and new kit and things to put them on.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned public cloud. Typically, people think about AWS, about Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Engine, IBM software, these kind of things. But what about medium-sized cloud providers, small and medium-sized cloud providers who provide specialist service?
Yep.
And if you look at the context, first technology drove the change and disrupted how operations worked, how departments on all levels in the company work. And now we are going full circle back into how that disruption defines new requirements. And where you say that data governance and mining data out of financial, or mining value out of financial data is becoming a new requirement. How do you think will that impact medium-sized specialized cloud providers?
It is going to be quite interesting, because I think we're going to be taking PII data, personal data, financial data. We're going to be putting it into third-party systems to get some kind of result. And I think it's going to be really, really key for the CFO and if they exist, the CIO and the CISO role, to make sure that they've done the proper kind of audit on those third parties before they allow them to have their crown jewels. We've seen various problems with NHS, for instance. We're providing data to, I think it was Google Cloud, if I remember rightly, and that was that hadn't been properly sanctioned. So it's going to be really important that the CFO and the CIO together are laying out the foundations under which you will give your data to these third parties, and that you're doing the right level of audit of those third parties to make sure that they're not going to disclose, accidentally on the most part, but they're not going to disclose that personal data.
Yes. Not trying to mention or to scare people, but in this context, GDPR, the Data Protection Act, makes clear statements about that you are, as a company, financially liable for these kind of incidents, whether they are intentional or mostly not. But that leads to me, our conversation leads me to the conclusion that the role is changing much more from a external perception of being bunkered in financial data into a much more leading role, much more driving the collaboration, which has the question, every company has to ask the question, what's the TCO of doing it on your own and running it with a network of specialized cloud providers?
I think Rose is right. I mean, I think that most definitely, the overall total cost of ownership is a key thing. But I think the most important thing for any CFO who's getting involved in this sort of project is don't panic. There's plenty of time, plenty of opportunity to get this right. And as Douglas Adams would say, always know where your towel is. But I think the key thing is to make sure that you've done the right level of audit of the potential third party. Make sure you're comfortable with the fact that you're putting your data on their servers, so realistically it's just an extension of your servers. Are you comfortable with it being there? Are you happy? Have you done the right level of due diligence? So should something go wrong, you can at least say, well, we did our best. And I think that's all we can ever say we can do.
Yes, thank you, Simon. In conclusion, I think it is pretty clear that in the future, in the next few years, the role of the of the CFO will change from running the financial data into audit, into governance, and let the professionals do the specialized work. And with that, thank you very much, and tune in with the next episode.
Goodbye.